right, just need to check. And we are live. Wonderful. Welcome back to another Monday evening presentation on a roadmap for a moral society. This is episode number 9. Unfortunately, our host is not here tonight. He could not make it. So we are going to be leading, John and I are going to be leading the discussion. And we're going to get started. So we have the subject this week is about moderation and detachment. It's about finding balance. Let's see, detachment from the need of possession in material and spiritual world. Sorry. So Baha'u'llah says moderation from His Holiness Baha'u'llah. Choose ye the part of moderation. This is that whereto He who is the all-possessing, the Most High, hath commanded you in a noble book. The civilization so often vaunted by the learned exponents of arts and sciences will, if allowed to overleap the bounds of moderation, bring great evil upon men. Thus warneth you, who is the all-knowing. If carried to excess, civilization will prove as prolific a source of evil as it has been of goodness when kept within the restraints of moderation. Meditate on this, O people, and be not of them that wander distraught in the wilderness of error. The day is approaching when its flame will devour the cities, when the tongue of grandeur will proclaim, the kingdom is God's, the Almighty, the All-Praised. So if we could have some quick discussion about this quote. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions or if you have a comment about what we just read.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think I have seen this quote before. I think it's a really powerful quote. And I feel like it's one that is sadly a bit overlooked sometimes, even by the Friends. I think of that quote, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the book of love, or plant not but the rose of love. And from the nightingale of affection, loosen not your hold. And then we're told to cherish the companionship of the righteous, but to eschew all fellowship with the ungodly. And that word eschew, the Guardian explains, does mean shun, right? To have nothing to do with, to completely avoid. This quote is an example of the reason why. And where society has gone in the last 50 years causes me great concern for my children and others. And I feel sometimes the Friends are too quick to embrace everything that is seen as progressive, perhaps in the name of progressive revelation. Whereas this talks about overleaping the bounds of moderation and bringing great evil upon men. So anyway, I think it's a very important quote.
Thank you, Wade. Yeah, to me, these passages are urging people to practice moderation, as you highlighted, and not to overindulge in the advancements of civilization. So I guess if no one else has any questions or comments specifically about this slide, we'll move on to the next one. And if I can have some volunteers who would be able to read, I would appreciate it. So just jump on in. So this slide is saying balance and right timing. This quote is, "Whatsoever passeth beyond the limits of moderation will cease to exert a beneficial influence. Consider, for instance, such things as liberty, civilization, and the like. However much men of understanding may favorably regard them, they will, if carried to excess, exercise a pernicious influence upon men. The word of God, which the supreme pen hath recorded on the 9th leaf of the most exalted paradise in this, in all matters, moderation is desirable. If a thing is carried to excess, it will prove a source of evil. The beloved of the Lord should under all conditions be guided by the rule of moderation." So I think these passages are emphasizing the importance of moderation again in all things, and warning that if anything is taken to an excess, it will have negative effects, similar to, like, sugar, right? If I gave my kids all the sugar they wanted, they'd never sleep, and neither would I. And so that would be a terrible thing. So I think, there's this coming back to balance and right timing, and being able to make sure that we understand that while we have access to a lot of these benefits of modern society, we also need to really take the time to understand what we should be focusing on, and what we should be applying in our lives directly on a daily basis, and how much of any particular aspect of it we really bring into our lives.
I think it would be important if you start discussing examples on different matters for this to be understood properly.
Kambiz, do you have an example?
For example, somebody who's extremely wealthy, what does it mean, moderation? Moderation having wealth, or moderation in terms of their lifestyle? What does it mean?
It's a good question.
Things like eating and clothing and all that, it's quite simple. We understand it. Everything has to be in moderation, dignified. But then we got to look at some examples that are a little bit more complex. What does it mean?
So I think you raise a very good question. One of the concerns that I've had, and this predates me even being a Baha'i. I've been a Baha'i for about 14 years, but prior to that, I was a Christian minister. And this topic has always been a concern where in that world and in that context, there was more strict, I'll call it coercion, right? Coercion in the groups that we were at to restrict behavior. There were many, many rules on dress. There was a period of time where women in our denomination were not allowed to wear makeup. And we see this in other religious contexts, right? So I think one of the things I love about the Baha'i faith is it doesn't seek to get prescriptive in all those details. And it does speak in principles, but even there's a balance, right? We do have laws around alcohol, for example. But it's a great question, right? But there's also a balance in where to go in terms of specific examples, because the minute you start setting specific examples, then those examples are used to judge others in whether they conform or not to the standard that one is espousing. It's a difficult and thorny matter, is what I'm getting at.
Baha'u'llah said having wealth is fine. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy.
Exactly.
Here we read, he says, in all things moderation. The way I understand it, even the wealthy person should maintain their lifestyle in a moderate way, because once you start living excess, getting involved with all the luxury of life, then you could lose your way, your path. That's why Christ said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. Because somehow, some way, majority of individuals lose themselves once they become wealthy. That wealth becomes a barrier. No matter how well their intention is, unless you're extremely spiritual and you're connected, you could lose your way.
Absolutely. It's also moderated by the statements by Abdul Baha around those wealthy men and how they should use their wealth, right? Those who are wealthy are commended to the degree that they use their wealth in service, right? And that is perhaps an aspect of that moderation, even if they might have a nice car and a nice house and other things that other people who don't have their means would look at as immoderate. Because it's all a matter of perspective, and individuals come up with their opinions about what is moderation and what is excess.
Well, I mentioned Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha mentioned a rich man who spends his money towards the progress of civilization, on individual well-being of humanity. He called him light upon light.
Yes.
Okay? Which is very difficult to do. Very few people can manage that.
So, I think there was also a quote, but I can't remember it. So please bear with me. But it was, and maybe Wade, you've heard of it, where in the context of greed, if someone is greedy for, let's say, wealth or for power, those are negative ramifications for that uh, attribute. But if someone is greedy for knowledge and for being able to be of service to humanity, then that also lends itself to it being an acceptable use of the term. So, I think it's probably getting a little too far off from topic in this slide, but does anyone else have any other thoughts or questions about this slide?
Also, that can be connected to detachment that I'm sure you're going to read about it
Yeah,
later.
we're going to get to detachment as well. All right, let's go to the next one. In the world of being, the life and safety of all things are the result of moderation and of acting in due season, whilst their death and destruction result from transgressing the bounds of moderation and from not acting in due season. All that is praiseworthy, every profitable utterance and action, become, when they transgress the bounds of moderation and of respect of due season, unseemly and detrimental. It is hoped that the friends, and in particular the ardent and enkindled youth, will neither depart from nor overstep the bounds of courtesy and the limits of moderation. These passages are emphasizing the importance of moderation in all things again, and warning that anything taken to excess will have negative effects. They also mention that this principle is stated in the Word of God, and that those who are beloved of the Lord should always follow this rule of moderation. So if there's anything particular, I think we're kind of getting the gist of these slides. They're just, again, highlighting the key to understanding and really taking to heart the concept of moderation and how important it is. So any last minute thoughts from anyone before we move to the next slides? All right. So now we're going to start moving into this concept of detachment. Cast away that which ye possess, and on the wings of detachment soar beyond all created things. Thus biddeth you the Lord of creation, the movement of whose pen hath revolutionized the soul of mankind. In the name of our Lord, the exalted, the Most High, no man shall attain the shores of the ocean of true understanding, except he be detached from all that is in heaven and on earth. Sanctify your souls, O ye peoples of the world, that haply ye may attain that station which God hath destined for you, and entered thus the tabernacle which, according to the dispensation of providence, hath been raised in the firmament of the Baha'i. So, anyone have any comments about the quote from the Akdas here, and then the opening preamble? Any thoughts?
Detachment has nothing to do with ownership. You can own everything that you desire in this world, as long as you're not attached to it. Because God tests all his servants. He gives it and he takes it away.
I thought it was interesting in looking at the chat here. Shamim shared some beautiful quotes, actually. I took a moment to read the first two just before this slide was read. And I thought it was interesting. One of the quotes he shared, cited from the book, The Covenant of Baha'u'llah by Adib Tarzadeh, says, if a man's actions are motivated by the thought that he may reap a reward for himself in the next world, then this is detachment and the barrier between himself and God. So in terms of the idea that you use the process of deduction, knowing what detachment is not, which would be attachment to this idea of going to heaven by doing good acts is itself attachment, and it's antithetical to the idea of detachment. I thought that was interesting to share.
To share with you, their ownership exists in the next worlds too. It's not in this world alone. Also, in all the worlds of God, ownership exists. When Baha'u'llah refers to attachment to this world and the next, also he's speaking about that.
Could you explain that a little bit more? I don't understand.
In the writings of Baha'u'llah specifically mentions about ownership. The same way we have ownership in this world, we have ownership in the next, in all the worlds of God. And the soul can become attached to it. That's why if you learn detachment in this world, you're safe in all the worlds of God. This is the place you have to learn that, detachment. But ownership, to whatever extent that world has, exists.
It sure makes it difficult to be successful at anything. It's so complicated.
Well, he tests you with everything. He tests you
I guess.
all along.
So I just want to reiterate that this is a group discussion, so feel free to jump in with any of your questions, comments.
Jeremiah, I'm sorry, I
we'll
wasn't ignoring you guys earlier. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Hello,
you.
aloha to everybody. Jeremiah, I haven't been able to come and be with you guys. Unfortunately, I've been working 7 days a week for about the same period as most women have their pregnancy, so about 8-9 months. So I've been extremely busy, and I apologize. This is a very important topic because day by day the world is becoming more godless, more immoral, less ethics, less integrity. Integrity starts with yourself. You can lie to other people, you can lie to yourself, but ultimately you can't lie to God. God knows everyone's hearts. In terms of detachment, if you just realize that nothing belongs to you to begin with, that when you're born, your zygote, the embryo, is created. At that moment, the soul is associated with the body. This is one reason why Baha'is are staunchly anti-abortion, because you're killing a potential, you're killing a cause for something to have eternal happiness and bliss, and you just snuff it out and take it away. Now, there's extenuating circumstances, just like with anything else. Some people, with all due respect, and you know how blunt I am, and I'm only blunt because I love humanity. I'm not blunt because I have this holier than thou complex. Most people, Jeremiah, they kind of take religion as a joke, because it's become a joke. They take it as some sort of buffet. Religion is not a buffet, where you can follow some rules and some laws, like don't have sex before marriage, but no, smoke as much weed as you want, even though you don't need it for medicinal purposes. Drink as much alcohol as you desire, knowing that you're going to get cirrhosis of the liver, but you do it because, a wine a day keeps the doctor away. So there's a lot of skewed things of what even religion is. As you see real quick, I don't want to go off on a tangent. As you see what's happening in Iran right now, most people absolutely despise Islam. They absolutely despise any sort of religious authoritative figure, because Baha'u'llah, as you know, came and said that clergy are not necessary anymore. Are there still good clergy people out there? Of course. Are there bad ones out there? Sure. Are there good cops out there? Yes. Are there bad cops out there? Sure. I've been doing police and security work for 8 years. I've never taken my gun out of my holster unless I'm at home cleaning it. And yes, by the way, Baha'is can own guns. So what I'm trying to say, Jeremiah, my dear, is that some people live their whole life not realizing at all what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning of life. For individuals, it's everyone's meaning of life is different, but ultimately there are a few overarching axiomatic themes, like helping others, like Mr. Carmon said, not getting attached. The thing with attachment, we have to realize, is that nothing belongs to you. Not in this world, not in the next world. Even the time you spend on this earth is not your time. You're living on borrowed time, period, full stop. You're living on borrowed time. So every day that you wasted going out and, I don't know, sleeping around in your youth, drinking all the alcohol you want, smoking, doing illicit drugs, all that, you're not necessarily a bad person. See, I want everyone that's religious or spiritual to get this notion out of your mind, that there's good people and there's bad people. There's no such thing as good and bad. Everyone's good and everyone's bad. Everyone's a mixture of both. The only difference is that some people get it, some people don't get it. And you can't force somebody to get it. In Iran, these mullahs have been for 44 years trying to force people to get it when they themselves don't get it. They themselves say, I'm the waiter of 12th Imam. We as Baha'is know it's quite insulting that the Bab came for 6 years. He had a ministry. They assassinated him. They martyred his holy, blessed body with 750 bullets. They riddled his body. Then they threw him in a moat outside like he was nothing. So that's quite insulting to us as Baha'is. What I'm trying to say, though, last thing I want to say, is that if you realize that nothing is yours to begin with, and by following the rules of the Kitab Aqdas, and by following the rules of Christ, Buddha, all the religious texts, you're actually not limiting yourself. You're actually becoming free. Because in the Aqdas, Baha'u'llah says, don't think that I've just given you a set of rules. I'm paraphrasing terribly, but think not that we have just, revealed unto you a mere code of laws. Nay, rather, we've unsealed the choice wine of whatever it was. May God forgive me for forgetting this quote. But what I'm saying, Jeremiah, is that especially in our youth, we have so much, especially as men, we have so much, pardon my French, piss and vinegar. We have so much testosterone. I go to the gym every day, because if I don't go do that and bend my energies to good things, like bettering myself, taking care of my mental health, taking care of my physical health, going in junior youth groups, I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. If you don't bend those youthful energies in your 20s and 30s, of course you're going to go out and fornicate. Of course you're going to go out and do things that you shouldn't be doing, because the energy that you have will always be there in your youth. How you bend those energies is important. It's the same thing with religion. If you don't get why the rules are there, why Baha'u'llah gives you rules like don't do this, don't do that, and you just think, well, it's just some authoritative figure telling you what to do, rather than realizing that by you doing these things, it keeps you from, I think one of the gentlemen mentioned, keeps you from tests. Tests only come to you if you don't follow the rules to begin with. But if you understand why the rules are there, you understand it's ultimately for your betterment and not enslavement or detriment, then you realize that the rules are actually there for your benefit. So that's all I want to say, because you hear a lot of people saying, well, if you're religious, that just means it's a hypocrisy because some people follow the rules and some people don't follow the rules. That's another reason, final thing, is that in the Baha'i writings, we don't have clergy. We don't hate clergy. It's just we don't have the need for that anymore, for some authoritative figure to come tell you as a woman what you should do with your body, or as a man how you should live your life, or vice versa. You have to decide for yourself. But just remember, friends, you can lie to yourself, you can lie to other people, but you can't lie to God. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. So are there any other points people would like to raise on this point, or shall we move on to the next quote? I see a check mark from Matt.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you on that. Made it much more clear for me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Leave this material world for those who lunge for it. Move towards the revelation of your Lord through detachment from it. All you need is my love to guide you on your journey in both earth and heaven. So this quote right here is, leave thou the world unto such as have set their affections upon it. Detach thyself from all that hath been created therein. Turn then thy face unto the countenance of thy Lord, the beneficent, the Ancient of Days. Leave thou the kingdom of this world unto such as seek after it, and come forth out of the prison of vain hopes. Be then content with my love. Verily it is better than the treasures of earth and heaven, and then all that hath been and shall be. These quotes are urging the reader to detach themselves from the material world and the desires for it, and to instead turn towards the revelation of God and be content with His love. It is stated that this love is better than any possessions or treasures of the earth and heaven. So, does anyone else have any thoughts about these two quotes?
So
Kambiz, if you're speaking, you're muted.
yeah, if you're trying to unmute, we can unmute you. Or here, can you request him to unmute?
Yeah.
Okay, the thing is that the things of this world, the reality, it exists. Like light and darkness. Darkness is only absence of light, but has a reality, darkness, even though it's absence of light. You see? The wealth of this world comparison to the wealth of the next is like the shadow. Has no reality in comparison. That's how God tests you, to determine where you belong spiritually in other worlds of God. He said with fire we test the gold, with gold we test our servants. You see? So even though it looks to us like fantastic, all the beautiful things in this world, but once you realize in comparisons, really is nothing, is illusion. You don't want to be attached to something that doesn't have a reality. Because Baha'u'llah said, if this was real, was important, all the manifestation of God would possess it in this world.
Thank you, Kambis.
Well, Jeremiah, real quick, if we have time, it reminds me of thank you, Kambis Khan. It reminds me of what Buddha said with the with the sevenfold path. But Buddha talks about the reason why we have so much sorrow on this planet or on this earthly plane of existence, to use a more elevated, Baha'i term, I guess. On this physical plane of existence, like Kambi said very nicely, it's not that material thing itself, or for me, example, I'll just give you a very example, not to be too personal. When my father died 8 years ago, I had a lot of attachment, right, to my father. Even though my father is not a thing, he is a human soul, just like all of us we're human souls in this physical garb. Some of us are 6'3", some of us are 5 foot, some of us, but your soul doesn't have a gender, right? Your soul doesn't have a physical shape or whatever, right? Nobody knows what a human soul looks like. Baha'u'llah says, So what I'm trying to say is, when my father died 8 years ago and I couldn't go and bury him in Iran, and my life story, that was very hard for me because, it's your father, he gave you, 50%, he gave you life, right? So I had a lot of, it was hard for me to let go, but then I realized, he's in a much better place. I actually feel closer to him now than I did before he passed. And he was in Iran and I'm here in Oklahoma, right? So what I'm saying to you is, attachment is it's a tricky thing. I think, like Mr. Kami's again said, attachment is a tricky thing. Material things, if your house explodes, God forbid, a flood, something happens, you can get your house back, right? But you can't get like a human life back. Or that particular individual. So that's even I would say, this is my humble, opinion as a young Baha'i just trying to live my life. I think, Jeremiah, it's there's different levels of attachment, if that makes sense. Because it's one thing to be attached to like a pen. It's another thing to be attached to a loved one, or it's just you meet somebody on the street, then the next day you find out they're sick, you feel sad for them. It's not that you have attachment for the person necessarily, although you do. You kind of, if you're a loving person like Abdul Baha, everywhere Abdul Baha went, he made friends. Of course that's Abdul Baha. None of us are Abdul Baha, nor will we ever be. But if that makes sense, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the idea of even attachment, like Mr. Kami said. It's okay to be wealthy. It's okay to, Baha'u'llah says it's okay to eat out of saucers of silver and cups of gold, but it's not getting attached to them. It's having those pure intentions, and it's like, okay, why am I making money? Am I making money to glorify myself, or am I making money to give it to a Google, give it to the funds, open up an orphanage, a homeless shelter? Like, what are my intentions, if that makes sense? I think that's the most important thing, because again, like I said a few minutes ago, you can lie to yourself, you can lie to other people, and you can say, well, I'm making this money to better my community. You can lie to other people. Sometimes some of them may never find out, but it's always going to be between you and God. And God knows everything, right? God sees everything. But anyway, with the sevenfold path, it's not getting attached. It's the same thing Buddha says, the only reason why we have suffering and sorrow on this planet is because we get attached to things that are material, where in reality, we're a spiritual being on vacation, and we should be detached from those things because we can't take them with us. And that's why we suffer.
Thank you, Shamim.
Thank you for sharing.
Can you hear me? This is Wade. I'm on my phone. I don't know if,
Wade, we can hear you, Wade.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make two quick comments. My understanding around Buddhism, and this may be a little helpful to add to what was just said is that it's actually the desire for those things that causes the suffering. So desire is perhaps another aspect that can help us understand attachment. It's our desire for those things. And then the other comment is that wealth, there's a lot of talk about money, but there's other kinds of wealth. And, the most grievous veil that separates us from God, I've been told, based on the quotes from the Baha'i faith, I can't remember the exact quote, but the most grievous veil is knowledge. And when I was confronted with the Baha'i faith and eventually became a Baha'i, knowledge was the biggest barrier, given that I was a minister and I kind of know the Bible inside out, as some of you know. And so our knowledge might be something that we're very attached to, and kind of that's where our wealth is. For somebody else, it might be beauty, right? They might be very attached to, the way they look, or there are other forms of wealth. It's not just money. And then the desire to be those things or have those things is an aspect of attachment. I just wanted to contribute those thoughts.
Thank you, Wade.
May I share something with you?
Please, go ahead, companies.
In the Hidden Words, Baha'u'llah says in one of the sections that God wants to be loved above all things. I'm sure you all have read that. And also the small obligatory prayer, I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. Okay? Now, in a lot of the Baha'i writings, we read about the love of God. What is the definition of love of God? To me, the definition of love of God is the first page of Kitab Aqdas, where Baha'u'llah says, first, to recognize the manifestation of God for day and age you live in, be obedient to all the laws. Then he says, qualifies it, one will not be accepted without the other. What this means that no matter what you love, has to be through the love of God. That means through obedience to his laws. Anything that is against his laws is forbidden. Whether it's your family or things of the earth or whatever, it has to be through the understanding and obedience to the laws of God, through the manifestation for day and age you live in. Then you're safe if you do that. Then there's one thing in addition also in the Baha'i writings said, steadfastness. Because you could be obedient to the laws you read and you're obedient, then God suddenly tests you with something very difficult. That's where the steadfastness comes into the picture. You see? God said, Baha'u'llah says, just because you say you believe, don't think you're not going to be tested. That's where steadfastness comes into the picture. So whenever you talk about love and detachment or attachment, as long as it's through the love of God, you're safe.
Well, thank you, everyone, for those thoughts. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide because we're running short on time. Power of detachment from rewards protects against addictive needs and desires. So this kind of, I think we're going to get into some of these more. Let's go. Sorry, give me a second. Detachment is a sun which, if it dawn above the soul's horizon, extinguisheth therein the fire of covetous and passion. Thus informeth you the Lord of all men, if ye be of them that understand. He whose eyes have been opened through the light of true understanding will detach himself from the world of being, and from whatsoever hath been created therein. Blessed is the one who hath been illumined with the light of detachment. He verily is among the companions of the crimson ark. So I put the notes on the wrong one. So the passage is describing detachment as a powerful force that can extinguish the negative emotions of covetous and passion in the soul. It is also stated that the one whose understanding has been illuminated by the light of true understanding will detach himself from the material world and its creations. The passage also says that those who achieve this detachment will be blessed and will be among the companions of the crimson ark. Any other thoughts about this quote?
You see, once somebody is obedient to the laws of God, they're safe from all of this attachment to drugs, alcohol, and all the other things that is forbidden. So they're safe. The only time that they get hooked is when they're not obedient. Because Baha'u'llah says, just run away from those things.
Well, Jeremiah, sorry to, it reminds me of that quote. Baha'u'llah says, obey my commandments for the love of my beauty. So you're not doing good deeds or like Mr. Kami said, in my humble opinion, again, this is just Shamin's opinion. You're not obeying the laws because you're wanting to reap a benefit, right? Because we already discussed that that's a no. You're not obeying the laws because you're hoping for reward in the next world, or you're what do you call it? You're afraid of punishment, going to hell, as it were, which, of course, as Baha'is, we believe it's being far from God. You're also not doing it like some people have stated. You're not doing it for the reward factor. So, uh, I don't know how some people have been brainwashed. You go to the next world, there's milk and there's honey and there's Islam, they say like 72 virgins. I'm not going to go into that. The Huris, as it is in Arabic, which that's not even the right interpretation of, whatever. But the point is that you're doing it because, in the words of, I don't know, Marcus Aurelius, it's just the right thing to do. So why do you do the right things? Well, in my humble opinion, again, you do them because they're the right things to do. Some of it actually comes to rational thinking, because I know a lot of people that are not religious per se. In fact, a lot of them think that organized religion is like a toxic cancer. I've had friends tell me just very bluntly, I don't believe in any religions, including yours, because they're organized, although your religion has a lot of good things to contribute. And I respect your beliefs. I just believe that religion in general, when it becomes organized, is a toxic cancer. I've had people tell me this. It's an opiate of the masses, Karl Marx, all that other BS. But if we realize that by following the laws, you're not doing them because of reward, you're not doing it for avoiding punishment, you're doing it because of love of Baha'u'llah, because he says, obey my commandments for the love of my beauty. Once you realize that through that rational lens, or I guess it's more of like a heart connection, sometimes that's the only way someone will ever understand. Because like when I try to teach the faith to my friends, I don't really try to break it down in terms of anything other than I try to tell them a brief history of the faith and have them understand all the sufferings of Baha'u'llah, what he went through. And sometimes, because I'm a historian, or history was my major in college, when I give them all those stories of how much Baha'u'llah suffered because he did all the right things, like Christ, like Muhammad, like Buddha, like all the prophets, he did all the right things, and people made fun of him and shunned him and threw him in prison. for 40 years because he always just tried to better humankind. Then when I tell them the story of Baha'u'llah and their heart gets attached, then they want to go investigate for themselves. But like Wade said, this knowledge thing, a lot of people are so proud of their knowledge. Oh, look at me, I'm so smart. Whether it's they're very science minded and they believe that there's no God, there's, you know, only Big Bang, whatever, or they're so religious, overtly religious, almost to their own detriment, that it becomes, their mind has become crystallized, rigid, and stuck in 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago, that they don't want to hear that Baha'u'llah is the return of Christ and etc. Then that's a problem. So I try to go through it through the heart, because sometimes logical thinking, it's, you know, last thing I'm going to say, I think it was George Bernard Shaw. He said that the true enemy of truth is not ignorance. It's anti-truth, or it's the true enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, or it's not lack of knowledge. It's actually false knowledge. It's people that think that they know the right information, or they think they are living the correct lifestyle. They think they know all the answers, when in reality, I think we've used this word so many times, I think it's Mr. Gilbert's favorite phrase, in reality, they actually don't know anything. In fact, they don't even realize what they don't know. And so that's the biggest, I guess, if you want to call it, enemy of the cause of God, is people. It's not the people themselves, it's that ego, that narcissism, that I know everything, I don't need to update my spiritual information, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Shami. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Love of God erases the need for material possessions. God ordains every good thing in the material and spiritual worlds and its possession, as long as it does not create attachment and interfere with the Holy Spirit. Those in whose hearts have surged the oceans of love will never be occupied with the remembrance of the things of this world, but will be submerged in the ocean of detachment. Should a man wish to adorn himself with the ornaments of the earth, to wear its apparels, or partake of the benefits it can bestow, no harm can befall him, if he alloweth nothing whatever to intervene between him and God. For God hath ordained every good thing, whether created in the heavens or in the earth, for such of his servants as truly believe in him. So the first quote states that those who have strong love for God will not be preoccupied with material things and will instead be immersed in a state of detachment. And the second quote says that it is permissible for a person to enjoy the good things of the earth as long as they do not allow anything to come between them and God.
Yeah, I'd love to make a couple of comments on that. The first one is, I think we can overstate the case around why we obey the laws. I don't think it's accurate to say we should not obey them for the rewards in this life and the next life. I think this is a fundamental flaw in our understanding of progressive revelation. So if we look at Judaism, for example, it is very, very much based on the fact that you do these things and you will be rewarded for them. And the fundamental nature of the universe is such that when we align ourselves with the laws of God, we are blessed for it. And so that is one of the most basic lessons, you know, kind of what we teach our 2-year-olds and our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds is, you know, there are consequences to your actions. You behave this way and you will reap blessings. You behave that way and, you know, you will experience pain and trials, as was mentioned earlier. So I don't think we should overstate the case, but as we advance, this gets a lot more complicated and complex. And when we don't understand what the reward is, because the reward is not immediate, or the reward is that we have to develop a quality like patience, which we would prefer to have right now, right? We want it right now. No, the patience and those things which we're developing in this world, in this womb, we don't even know the nature of what they are until we're in the next world. We don't even know what's good and what's bad in terms of why we're obeying some of the laws. You follow me? So as we progress, we obey them because we trust in God. We trust in the manifestation, and we love God and we love the manifestation, and we do obey them out of love. But there will ultimately be a reward for the obedience to them. There will always be a reward for obeying those laws. So I don't think we want to overstate that case. And then I had one more comment related to the last quote you read. But now I can't remember what it was. My apologies.
It's all right. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I think there's something I
I
do.
got.
Sorry, who was that?
It's been. And I was gonna say that you know when we talk about morality, I noticed that especially Shamim, you have a "Don't Trust Me" poster, so I imagine you got some libertarian influence in the Baha'i writings, and you also brought up who, if I remember correctly, is well, I think it was an atheist, and I
Manav,
want to
your
caution
connection
people
is kind of
on.
tough. It's hard to hear you. Can you readjust where you're at
Can
so
y'all
that
hear
we can
me?
actually hear you? Your connection's breaking up. So we lost him. Sorry. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about these slides, this particular slide, before we move on?
Yeah, I had something. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead, Matt. We keep losing everyone. Sorry about this. Let's go ahead and move on. Essence of God's command is to set example of practicing the Holy Spirit with presence of God. The essence of detachment is for man to turn his face towards the courts of the Lord, to enter his presence, behold his countenance, and stand as witness before him. O Son of Light, forget all save me and commune with my spirit. This is of the essence of my command. Therefore, turn unto it. So the first quote describes detachment as a process of turning towards God and entering his presence and standing as a witness before him. The second quote instructs the reader to forget all things except God and to commune with his spirit. Any other thoughts about this? Anything particular that strikes you? Divorce yourself from presumption of knowledge and sensual experiences to be able to comprehend divine knowledge. Sorry. O son of dust, blind thy eyes that thou mayest behold my beauty. Stop thine ears that thou mayest hearken unto the sweet melody of my voice. Empty thyself of all learning that thou mayest partake of my knowledge, and sanctify thyself from riches, that thou mayest obtain a lasting share from the ocean of my eternal wealth. Blind thine eyes, that is, to all save my beauty. Stop thine ears to all save my word. Empty thyself of all learning save the knowledge of me, that with a clear vision, a pure heart, and an attentive ear, thou mayest enter the court of my holiness. Insisting self and divine love cannot exist in the same heart. Do not let anyone except revelation influence you. O my friend in word, ponder a while. Hast thou ever heard that friend and foe should abide in one heart? Cast out then the stranger, that the friend may enter his home. O son of earth, wouldest thou have me seek none other than me, and wouldest thou gaze upon my beauty? Close thine eyes to the world and all that is therein, for my will and the will of another than me, even as fire and water cannot dwell together in one heart. So the two quotes are urging the reader to choose God over all other things and to detach themselves from the world and its distractions in order to fully connect with God. It states that it is impossible for the will of God and the will of anything else to coexist in the same heart, and thus the reader should cast out anything else to make room for God. It also suggests that the way to gaze upon the beauty of God is to close one's eyes to the world. So, any thoughts here?
Well, one of the things is that once an individual becomes obedient to the laws of God and practices in one's life, that individual become extremely happy in their life. Because happiness is an internal thing, it's not an external thing. It's a spiritual thing. And greater your spiritual
Well, Jeremiah Abdu'l-Baha says that happiness is founded upon spiritual behavior. So if you're, like Mr. Kami said, if you're obeying the laws, the proof is in the pudding, if that makes sense. It like Wade said, well, yeah, there is a reward, there is a benefit, but the benefit is in and of itself. Does that make sense? So, you go and you get out in nature. Like I try to go hunting and camping and whatever once a year. And I go out, I go backpacking. Sometimes I go completely by myself. I tell people, hey man, this is where I'm going to be. If you don't hear from me in 1 week, either call me or assume I'm dead. I don't know. But I go out in nature. Abdu'l-Baha or Baha'u'llah would go out in nature for days, months at a time. He went to the mountains of Kurdistan, Sulaymaniyah, for two years and some change to get away from people, particularly his own family, which half of them, or later on 80% of them, 90% of them, all became covenant breakers. So imagine if Baha'u'llah, a prophet of God, had attachment to covenant breakers. Just imagine that. I know it's hard to wrap your mind around. So even his own family was a test for him. Baha'u'llah's own family. Just imagine this. 90% of his family, vast majority of his family, became covenant breakers. Why? Because somebody like Mirza Yahya let his ego, let that I think one of the gentlemen was saying, let that knowledge kind of get to his head that, oh, the Bab said that I'm the next one after him. Granted that Baha'u'llah wasn't going to manifest himself, which he did. So if you realize that the reward is in and of itself, following the laws of God is a reward, I would argue that you're not necessarily, again, you're not doing it for the reward. The reward is in and of itself, because when you obey, like Mr. Kami said, you just have peace. I asked my friends, I said, what price can you put on, like, I don't know, Mona Lisa? What currency value can you put on something like Mona Lisa? What's the Mona Lisa? Work of art, right? It's just a painting. But what value can you put on like Venus de Milo or the Statue of David or the Sistine Chapel? Why am I giving you artworks? Because they're one of one. It's the same thing with nature. You go out in nature, you have peace. What price, Jeremiah, can I put on peace? Zero. There is no price. The price is something that's, if you want to use the term priceless, but the price is in and of itself. The reward is in and of itself. So when you do the right things, just for the sake of doing the right thing, because it's the right thing, you're not doing it because you're attached to reward. You're not doing it because you're attached, or rather would not like to receive punishment. When you just do the right things because it's the right thing to do, in your heart, you have that rational mind, that free will that God has given you, that God has not given to any other creation of his, except you, as a supposedly intelligent human being, if you choose to use your free will for the right things. But again, at the end of the day, you do the right things because it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is not always the easiest. In fact, a lot of times, doing the right thing is the hard thing to do, not the easiest thing to do. That's why being a good person is difficult. If being a good person was easy, Jeremiah, we would be living in God's glorious paradise as I speak. But we're not. Because when I was 5 years old, my mom told me it's very easy to be a bad person. It's very difficult being a good person. I liken it unto, I'll say this story real quick. It kind of was an epiphany to me a couple of years ago. It's like the difference between someone who practices the laws of God and someone who doesn't. It's like this. The person that's a good person, they're actually the stronger of the two. And I'll tell you why. It's like you have your hand, and you're on the edge of a cliff, and you're holding on to this edge of this cliff. All you have to do, Jeremiah, to be a bad person, all you have to do is let go of the edge of that cliff. Take your hand, let go. All that's going to do is the gravity is just going to pull you down to the depths of degradation, depravity, lustfulness, egotism. You understand all the negative qualities. Like Mr. Comey said, the antithesis of the good qualities are null and void. Like darkness is the void of light. All you have to do, though, is to become, or not become, but to stay in that spiritual elevated, realm. All you have to do is just hold on. Now, what's easier to do? Hold on or to let go? I would argue it's much easier to let go than to hold on. But the longer you hold on, the longer you have that steadfastness. As Baha'u'llah says, light upon night, or as we say in Arabic, nur al nur. There you go.
Thank you. All right, let's we gotta get moving. We're already running a little behind. I apologize. Keep your soul free from material and spiritual attachments by whatever means possible, otherwise it may distance you from God. By detachment is meant the detachment of the soul from all else but God. In other words, that it should ascend unto a station wherein not that may be seen betwixt earth and heaven could debar it from the one true God. That is, the love of any matter and occupation therewith would not distract it from the love of God and from occupation with his remembrance. In fine, by detachment is not and never shall be intended extravagance and the dispensation of one's substance, but rather a state wherein he turneth unto God and holdeth fast unto him. By whatsoever means this state be attained, and from whatsoever thing it be revealed, it witness the same is detachment, and the beginning and the end thereof. The passage is defining detachment as the detachment of the soul from all else but God, which means that the soul should reach a state where nothing that exists between the earth and the heaven can keep it away from God. The love of anything or occupation would not distract it from the love of God and from the occupation of his remembrance. It also clarifies that detachment doesn't mean extravagance and wasting one's substance, but rather a state where one turns towards God and holds on to him. The passage emphasizes that whatever means is used to achieve this state, and wherever it's revealed and witnessed, that's what detachment is, and it's the beginning and the end. Anyone have anything that jumps out at them with these quotes? Combis, if you want to say something, excuse me, you have to unmute
All right.
yourself.
No, I'm saying that from Baha'i writings, to become detached, it means Baha'u'llah says that we must feed our soul every morning and every evening by reading the writings. Also, every day we say our obligatory prayers. When it comes to fasting, we fast. These are all part and parcel of the obedience to the laws of God. As long as we know those and we abide by them, we live by them, gradually, this is a gradual process. We'll become detached from this world.
Well, we're going to be detached from it at some point, right? I mean, that's one of those guarantees. Detachment is a sovereign remedy for the healing of man's ills and maladies. One pure heart can penetrate the heart of humanity. This quote here: O Ali, upon thee be my glory. How excellent the words which thy tongue hath uttered. Detachment by itself exerteth an influence and exerciseth an attraction. In most of the tablets, the praises of this station have flowed forth and been sent down from the pen of the Most High. It verily is a sovereign remedy for the healing of man's ills and maladies. Well is it with him who cleaveth fast thereunto. He verily is numbered in the book of God, the Lord of the worlds, with those who aid his cause. O Ali, by the righteousness of God, one heart, if it be pure and sanctified and freed from attachment to the things of this world, will through the power of the Spirit transform the hearts of men and penetrate to the hearts of the world of being. Any thoughts? Anything that jumps out here?
Also, attachment comes from fear. Attachment to the material things of this world, one thinks that they're safe, but they're not. Actually, Baha'u'llah says greater becomes the material attachment, greater becomes fear in the individual.
World glory, pursuit of material wealth, and prominence is for lost souls. Pure in heart would not be influenced by the material world's treasures. Excuse me. As for the circumstances that some are, as thou observest, elated by the world's glory and deluded by its imminence, such preoccupation is attributable to the heedlessness of these souls. He is the true servant of God, who in this day, were he to pass through cities of silver and gold, would not deign to look upon them, and whose heart would remain pure and undefiled from whatever things can be seen in this world, be they its goods or its treasures. I think most of these are somewhat self-explanatory, so I'm gonna just read through, but please, if there's something specific that catches your eye about any of these slides, just jump in and say, hold up, let's have a discussion about it. But it's 8:15 right now, and we only have about 15 more minutes before we close out this session. So I'd like to get through a few more of these slides. If man partakes the love of God with detachment, nothing would prevent him following the Holy Spirit. By him who shineth above the dayspring of sanctity, if the whole earth were to be converted into silver and gold, no man who can be said to have truly ascended into the heaven of faith and certitude would deign to regard it, much less to seize and keep it. Should a soul drink but one drop from the ocean of love, or attain a mere sprinkling from the ocean of detachment, the whole world would appear in his eyes as a handful of dust, and nothing in the heavens or in the earth would prevent him from following in the way of his best beloved. When a man completely destroys his own will practicing the Holy Spirit, it will be more valuable than all his material achievements in the eyes of God. Detachment is the source of exaltation, and righteousness is the cause of elevation. Blessed is he who in this day cleaveth unto the beloved, and in his path renounceth and disregardeth all else but him, that he may behold the world made new, and find his way unto the everlasting paradise. The soul of one believer who hath wholly obliterated his own will and purpose in those of the true one is better and more pleasing in the sight of God than all that is on earth. The power of detachment and the love of God is giving away possessions. Excuse me. Although the whole world is from God, and all confess and acknowledge this to be
Went
so.
out.
Sorry, go ahead. What was that?
I didn't hear the last parts of what you're saying. Did everyone hear that?
Yes, we heard.
Go ahead, Jeremiah. Let's hear it.
Okay. Although the whole world is from God, and all confess and acknowledge this to be so, and notwithstanding that whatsoever hath been granted unto the peoples of the earth is but so many gifts from the ocean of his loving kindness, yet were they to be commanded to give away that which they possess, assuredly thou wouldest observe some to fall short, or hold back, and others to attain, by virtue of the effulgences of the light of the sun of detachment, a station wherein, with perfect love and devotion in the path of God, they would expend whatsoever they possessed, as hath indeed been witnessed. Attaining safety and salvation in the ark of God through detachment from all but God. Beware of trading your faith for temporary benefits. O people of Baha, having detached yourselves from all save God, enter ye and dwell within the ark of God and the ship of everlasting glory. Inasmuch as everyone who cleaveth unto this ark is numbered in the sight of God with the people of affirmation, of salvation, of heaven, and of paradise. While whoever tarrieth behind is counted among the people of the fire, of perdition, of hell, and of the abyss. Beware lest ye barter away your faith for a pittance, or exchange the glorious divine Joseph for the benefits of this world and the next. Ere long shall ye behold all visible things reduced to nothingness. Make haste, therefore, with the utmost effort and exertion, to attain the shadow of him who is the Lord of creation. For there is not, nor ever hath there been, a place of safety other than his shadow. So should we pause here for a moment, and I'd like to hear anyone's thoughts about the past couple slides that we've gone over. I mean, this is honestly more for discussion from the group. So
Jeremiah, quick question, my brother.
yeah,
This one right here, Madie what Madie? Oh, Asamani, Asamani. Okay, of the sky. Is this one a provisional
yeah,
I've never heard of. I'm assuming this is a tablet
yeah. These
of
are
Baha'u'llah.
from
Okay,
these are
okay,
provisional tablets
okay.
that we're looking at.
Okay. No wonder I've never, no wonder I've never really come across it. It's interesting. You talk about this Ark of Salvation, and it's been around, this kind of, I don't want to call it idea, I guess, this notion of Ark of Salvation. It was around when, or the story of Noah. And actually, in the Baha'i writings, I have to find it, but it was a letter of Shogi Effendi's, and he talks about how that actually never happened. It actually never physically happened. The story of the flood of Noah, it actually never physically happened. I mean, how could it? I'm not saying it couldn't, because God can do anything he wants. If God wanted to create the Garden of Eden, he could. If God wanted to create, I guess, a woman from the rib of a man, although as insulting as it sounds to me, even as a man, um, I'm sure women get offended, like, oh, we were created from a rib of a man. Like, all these things I feel like are symbolic. I don't feel like they actually are symbolic, not because I say so, but because Shoghi Effendi, the Guardian, has written in multiple writings explaining why this is not actually the case. When we talk about the Crimson Ark, you read that in one of the writings. If you could pull that one up, if you could find it, where you talked about the Crimson Ark or Crimson Ark of Salvation, it's not like it's some sort of physical like magic school bus, if you can imagine. May God forgive me for saying this, that Baha'u'llah is driving around this magical Ark of Covenant, or this school bus, and it's picking up the good kids, and the bad kids get left behind in detention to burn in hell for eternity in the fires of abyss, or whatever it was. So it's not like that. We kind of make I don't want to say make light of these things, but I'm saying humans in general, not just Baha'is. It's hard for us to understand what these things mean. Now, if you read like the Tablet of the Holy Mariner, for example, and Baha'u'llah literally, like almost word by word, almost like he delineates things that will happen in the future. Couple of the things that I've read that, like Mr. Taherzadeh in one of his talks, he actually has like a 4-part series about the Tablet of the Holy Mariner, where Baha'u'llah literally tells or prophesizes, whatever you want to call it, of future things, foretells of future events to happen, like World War I, World War II, et cetera, how the Rhine's going to flow with red with blood twice, World War I, World War II. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, all of these things should be obviously taken symbolically when we hear of, like abyss or fire of hell, or, Baha'u'llah has brought the Ark of Salvation. The only kind of, I guess, physical thing that I feel like it would purport to, or it would foretell of, is when Baha'u'llah was on the side of Mount Carmel, and he told Abdu'l-Baha, he told his son that he pointed and he said, this is where the Shrine of the Bab is to be in the future. And then when we talk about the Crimson Ark, the only thing I can, probably this is false because I am not a intelligent human being on the level of Baha'u'llah, nor will I ever be. What I'm saying though is like the ark that like on Mount Carmel, where we talk about the ark, where it's like the what do you call it? The archives building was the first one to be built, right? Then you had the Universal House of Justice, the seat of the Universal House of Justice. Then you had, I believe, the International Teaching Center, or maybe it was the other way around. And then the Center for the Study of the Text. Those four buildings, plus all the gardens, plus the Shrine of Bab, plus the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha that's being built right now, plus the Shrine of Baha'u'llah. That's kind of like, if you want to call it, like if you look at it on a map, Jeremiah, it literally is like an arc. It's like curved, like an arc. So people putting too much emphasis on the physical, not us, but I've heard of people saying like, oh, it pertains to physical things. Sometimes if we get too attached to those kind of physical constructs to try to kind of validate the writings, I feel like it's the other way around. That makes any sense.
I think it's interesting that you kind of elaborated on that particular topic. And actually, this weekend, Christopher Buck is going to give a presentation at 1 p.m. So we're actually shifting so that he can make it, we're going to shift our regular schedule 11 a.m. program to 1 p.m. this weekend for him to be able to give his presentation on prophecies and trying to understand prophecies in the context of the Baha'i faith. So I highly recommend that you join that, and everyone in here tonight join that Sunday at 1 p.m.
Yeah, if you could send me the Zoom link, my friend, I'd love to join. Or if it's
Yeah,
going to be
a
on the
link's
Facebook
gonna
page.
go out a Zoom link's gonna go out Thursday. So just make sure that you
Okay.
go. If you're not on my email list, admin@clearwaterbahais.org.
I
Just
believe
email
I
me,
am. I
and
believe I am.
I'll make sure you get the email flyer that goes out on Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd
It
very
is
much like to hear it.
it's a couple minutes until we're gonna close out. So any last minute thoughts from anyone in here? By all means, we'll I think we're gonna end the slides there. Again, I apologize that our normal host couldn't be here tonight, but he should be here next week. So this is session number 9. So far we have 8 other ones. So if you haven't caught the 8 other ones, I highly recommend you go back and look through the playlist. You can find it on YouTube, the YouTube channel, or the Facebook channel, and check those out and get caught up. And then definitely, I think this was a good point to end on this slide, because this weekend, I think Christopher Buck's presentation is going to complement this very nicely. So I highly encourage everyone to attend that. So if there's no other thoughts or comments, I'm going to go ahead and close out this session tonight. And again, I just want to thank everyone for coming and participating. I appreciate everyone making the effort to be here. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Well, good night.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.